I think it's fair to say that we have quite a few pieces of uniform in the Great War Huts collection, but few of them are quite as rare as the piece that we're going to look at today. It's an Indian Cavalry Kurta. Now, when the Indian Corps arrived in France in the October of 1914, they'd come straight from India, and nearly all of them were wearing these long traditional Indian kurtas. It's a long tunic, and in its infantry form, it's half buttoned and you would pull it on over your head. The cavalry version was fully buttoned all the way down the front. And clearly it was designed for use in hot climates. So when the Indians arrive in France, a whole army corps of them, there was simply not enough uniform to re-equip them. So for the first few months of the war, in some of the worst weather over that winter, the Indians find themselves having to fight and hold line and holding trenches in freezing cold weather, wearing nothing more than this lightweight khaki drill. Now, this particular one has come from the Khaki Devil uniform hire stock. It's used for film and television work. But you get the idea of just how thin this fabric actually is, and clearly not ideal for anybody in the winter, let alone having to fight in it and live in it, having just come from a very hot climate and not being used to European winters. As soon as was possible, the British Army re-equipped the Indians with standard service dress, with tunics and trousers, and eventually the Indians are re-equipped with a serge version of the kurta. The majority of the Indian Corps leave at the end of 1915. By then there are all sorts of other fronts that have opened up in Mesopotamia and Palestine and goodness knows where else, where the Indian Corps are going to be much better suited to the climate. And the only troops that are then left on the Western Front are the Indian Cavalry, who will stay until the end of 1917 or beginning of 1918, when they too are eventually sent off to other fronts. But the Indian Cavalry by then are all wearing these kurtas, these wool kurtas, and as you can see, buttoned all the way down the front. And as you can imagine, these garments are incredibly rare. I can't think in all the years that I've been collecting, I don't think I've even ever seen another one. I'm sure they exist in museums, but it's certainly a very, very scare beast indeed. And eventually, when it goes on display, it will help to tell the story of those Indian cavalrymen who stayed in France after the rest of the Indian Corps had gone and fought in actions such as the one at High Wood in July 1916, where the Deccan Horse of the Secundrabad Cavalry Brigade charged into the Germans in the cornfields. So, like I say, a very, very rare piece of kit, and really the opportunity to tell the story of all of those thousands and thousands of Indian soldiers who came all the way from India to fight in Europe during the First World War.